Welcome to the Wolfpack.com podcast. I'm your host, Matt Carter. I haven't hosted in a long time. See, we used to have we still have Justin Williams hosting, and he is infinitely better at it than me. So I'm going to just screw this up and go right to the introduction of our guest. But real quick, at the Wolfpack.com, do take advantage of the deal we have going on. We've joined the On3 network. You get 12 months for $1. So can't beat that. All you got to do is pull out a $1 bill, and well, not really, because we don't take cash. But put a dollar on your credit card and get a year's worth of subscription. So with that said, we're gonna bring in our guest. He's a familiar face, obviously, to NC State fans, but he's taken on a new role that's really quite exciting, especially in today's college athletics world, and that's Scott Wood. And Scott, rather than introduce you and tell everybody what you're doing, I think it'd be best if you just told everybody about this name, image, and likeness collective called Pack of Wolves. What's your role in it, and just kind of let everybody know, big picture, what's it about?
Yeah, so kind of behind the scenes for the last 8 weeks, there's been a good group of us that have kind of got together and said, this is something NC State's going to need, obviously, for the future, from a recruiting standpoint, and it's something that is happening very, very quickly. So about eight weeks ago, so almost 2 months ago, we kind of got in a room, had some discussions, and thought about what's the best way that we can do this for NC State. And so over these 8 weeks, we've been trying to figure it out. We've gotten to the point where we're ready to launch and come out with some stuff. I was the one that was named executive director. But I will tell you, this is a complete group effort. There's probably four of us that have really kind of taken this on, maybe 5, 6 that have really kind of taken this on. And there's a bunch others in the background that have helped. A lot of people have donated their time. Obviously, a lot of people have donated their money to kind of get this thing up and running and get it up and running the right way. So I'm excited to kind of talk about it today and kind of launch this thing so that, all of our fans and all Wolfpack Nation can be a part of it.
What was the motivation behind it? I mean, about 8 weeks ago, you started talking about it, but what was the motivation behind it? What kind of drove you and these others to get this started?
Yeah, so, when this thing came out, I think it was not this January, but the January before, I had conversation with my wife who played softball at NC State, and I was like, I don't know if I'm a big fan of this. It's just because I played professional basketball, and as soon as I started getting paid, I lost a love for the game. It was just different after that. And so I looked at it as a almost different opportunity on how we can help. So again, my challenge to every single person is, obviously, you're going to have the money. I mean, that's just the reality of it. But let's just put that aside for now. How can I have a positive impact on a student athlete? How can I help them? There's multiple examples. We could talk about this all day. For me, I played 4 years at NC State, and then I played 8 years of professional basketball. So I have now built a resume of 12 years that only has basketball on it. That is very hard to do in the real world. I did not have NIL. So if I wanted to meet a Wendell Murphy and have lunch with him, it was frowned upon. Now that it is encouraged. So look of it more as the idea that we can now have a positive impact on these student athletes because they sacrifice a lot. Obviously they're getting an education, which is great, but a lot of their time is going towards the athletic side. So there's not a resume there. There's a big fear when a lot of these kids graduate, because I was one of the lucky ones that turned pro. Not everybody's going to turn pro. So let's get, these like-minded individuals, the student athletes and the businessmen, let's try to pair them up and create connections early on so that when, the ball stops flying, you stop hitting, you stop shooting, you now have created a bunch of connections, and there's almost a sense of NC State family. And that's the one thing with NC State people is NC State people just want to take care of NC State people. They're very loyal. They're great people. So now's our opportunity to kind of create that connection through the NIL.
I'll take you back to your playing days. You mentioned how busy you are. I mean, Is it fair to say when you're involved in men's basketball, football, softball, whatever, that it is almost like a full-time responsibility? As you mentioned, they don't really have an opportunity to go out and network that much and look past college as much as maybe a regular student does. So what is the time demand that a lot of these student athletes face?
Well, I mean, you can it's as simple as, so you're pretty much going to have weightlifting. So let's just mark that up as an hour and a half to 2 hours. And then you got on top of it, you probably got 2 hours minimum of study hall, and that's pretty much every day. Um, you got practice, which is going to be minimum 2.5, 3 hours a day. So now we're looking at 6 hours right there. Okay. That's not counting all the classes that you have in between. So now you got to go to class on top of it. And there are some student athletes that can get some internships and can do some stuff to help build that resume. But it's very rare. It's very rare. And I've used the example, the athletic department probably doesn't want to hear it, but when I came in my freshman season, I wanted to be a civil engineer. So I started in civil engineering. I probably never would have finished in civil engineering, which is fine. But I had a studio that interfered with practice, and someone asked me the question, did you come here to be a civil engineer? Did you come here to be a basketball player? And I answered, a basketball player. So the next day, I got out of civil engineering and majored in sports marketing. It's just a little decision that, probably had an impact on my life for what I could be doing now. But a lot of that stuff people don't fully understand, and I've had multiple conversations with former student athletes, football guys, baseball guys that have had similar, interaction. And that's just the reality of it. It's hard for a lot of people to see from the outside, but these student athletes are dedicating so much time to a sport with the idea that, it may not necessarily make them a professional athlete. So the next step is, what can they do? Give them the tools to have a better future.
Yeah. So far, what kind of reception have you gotten? I know you said it's been about 8 weeks putting in the legwork for this. What kind of reception have you gotten, and what's it been like working on this for you?
It's been a lot of fun because I've found a lot of passion for it. I really do. Looking back, I wish there was things that, obviously I could have done different. And then, getting in touch with a lot of former student athletes. Mike Glennon's been highly involved. Ralston Turner, financial advisor now, is going to be key for a lot of these student athletes when they start to get money. Having someone that, is financially savvy in front of them. TJ Graham has been a part of it. Andrew Sensen. I've reached out to Colin Jones. There's so many names of people that, kind of want to be involved with this. And obviously you're going to get the questions because you're going to see the Isaiah Wong that comes out and says, oh, I need more money. I went to a Sweet 16, this and that. You're going to see that, But also the reality of it is, with NC State is we're not going to be, again, we don't have a billionaire that's just going to drop a bunch of money in this. So it's going to be probably on a little bit smaller scale. It should be on a good scale, but there's so much more to it than just the fundraising. So obviously you're going to have some people that are a little bit concerned about, is this going to last? What are the rules and regulations that the NCAA are going to come out with? We've had multiple conversations with people around the athletic facility. I've had conversations with some coaches, and they think it's here to stay. They don't think the NCAA is going to do anything. They may start to monitor it a little bit more than what they have been, but it's just they've opened up a whole can of worms that they can't really fix right now. So it's going to be here, and it's necessary. So if we're going to do this, let's do it the right way and look out for the best interest of these student athletes.
You probably I don't know if you've been asked this question, but I'm sure some have thought this question. They already get a scholarship. Why do they need NIL? What have you been kind of talked about that subject with anybody yet?
Yeah, I should let my mom talk about this one because my mom's actually really, really passionate about this. And it kind of goes back to, my example that, I wanted to be a civil engineer. I can't dedicate all my time or as much time as I want to the academic side. My education is a big piece, and it was a big part of why I went to NC State. But I couldn't really do what I wanted to do because of how time demanding the basketball and some other things were. And that's a huge, huge sacrifice that a lot of people won't fully understand. And, with examples of these current student athletes and former student athletes that, we'll get on podcasts with you. We'll get on the social media platform. You'll start to hear some stories about why this is so much important. And I tell everybody, if the money is what really bothers you, dedicate your time to sit down with a student athlete, get to know them, and try and help them. Let that student athlete ask you questions. What's made you successful? How can I help? There are other ways. Like people that are skeptical about it, that's 100% okay. Like, I'm never going to make anybody be involved that doesn't want to be involved or is uncomfortable. But there's other ways that we can do this past the financial side of it. We can help these kids with time, advice, mentorship. There's other ways that NIL can help.
What I guess what is the main? We kind of talked about the goals of Pack of Wolves, but where do you see your main interest with helping these athletes? Is it kind of helping them get deals, or I guess where do you see it going?
So, the long-term plan is we've always kind of seen this as every single student athlete should be able to be compensated somewhat. Obviously, early on and from a funding standpoint, that may not be possible, but we can still have an impact. One of the things we've talked about is Oklahoma State has created what they call a brand squad. So it's a curriculum that NC State could take and teach current students about NIL, about how to create a brand, how to build a website, how to market some of these student athletes, and then pair them up with a student athlete. So you get a student and a student athlete that can then go back to a hometown. So, for example, if I got paired with a student that understands branding and all that stuff, we'll have calls back in Marion, Indiana, where I'm from, and connect with the local car dealership, connect with the local restaurant, and see if we can't do some deals. So, a lot of it is that kind of little stuff. Obviously, we're going to do a lot of deals with the student athletes, and we eventually want to get to all of them. But there's so many layers to it, just similar to that brand squad, that we could do a lot of things to help these student athletes, and it doesn't necessarily have to be through us. Because the one nice part about the collective is that not every student athlete has to use the collective. They can still go do other deals through businesses and other things. We're just here to help. If you need us to look at a contract, we can look at a contract. So that's what we're here for. Obviously, it's going to be unique, and there's going to be a lot of other things that come into play, but we just want to help.
Is this, I'm sure you get this question a lot too, is this specifically geared towards current student athletes? Because I know a lot of people worry about NIL as a recruiting tool. How do you see Pack of Wolves in that regard?
So over the last couple of days, the NCAA has come out with what they call a task force. So by rule, you cannot incentivize a transfer or pre-college athlete through NIL to get to campus. Now, if a transfer or a high school recruit has signed, then you can start to have conversations about what are the next steps. So obviously, we're all not naive in the fact that there's going to be a lot of universities that don't play by these rules. But the NCAA has kind of said we're going to put a task force together and try to monitor this the best they can. So, and a lot of it too is the current student athletes are going to be the good recruiting tools, not necessarily us. So if I do a deal with a couple of the student athletes and they bring a recruit on campus, they're now telling them about the Pack of Wolves and how they've taken care of them and how they can help. So we don't necessarily have to have a conversation. So once we start getting some deals with some of these student athletes, they'll be a big recruiter now for the future.
How many student athletes have you already talked to or discussed Pack of Wolves with?
I don't know an exact number. I know Tim McKay was our first one that we officially signed, that we announced via social media. But we've had conversations with at least 5 or 6 football players. We've had a couple conversations with coaches on the way they view NIL and how to do that. Had a couple conversations with some basketball players and some women's basketball players and some baseball players. So we're kind of just getting this thing started and just trying to get some of these what we call initial deals, which is going to be kind of an ambassador program to help kind of get this thing launched and get some social media presence of the Pack of Wolves, and then some of these student athletes can kind of give their stories, their likes, their interests, so that we can start to pair them with local businessmen within the community.
What's it been like for you? I mean, you're saying all of this. You got a lot of stuff we're talking about, I gotta imagine, does your head just swim at night? Like when you go to bed, is all of this stuff just like a recurrent? You dream about it at
Yeah.
this point?
So Hayes Lancaster is a big part of this. He's a good businessman that loves NC State. Jarrett Disbro is the same. Tom Lavolsi's a big one. So they've all been really, really involved in this. And you'll get a message at 5 a.m. about, oh, I got ideas. I got ideas. I got this. I got that. And there really is so much that we can do with it. It's a lot of fun to kind of think about. But we also got to remember, we got to kind of get some of this launch and some of this information together first, and then we can start to really worry about the next pieces. But it's a lot of fun. Like for me, I have the idea of doing a event for every single student athlete. Send out social media posts, any emails we can get, every single former student athlete, and have a little get together. And then mix in current student athletes and just have fun. All the soccer team together. All the swimmers together, all the best. To me, that just seems like a lot of fun. And then it's just almost like a mentorship and just asking how you can help, because there's so much to it. Top Golf and Carter Finley. Like, that'd be awesome. Like there's so many cool things and ideas that we have. And hopefully, we can get to the point where we can start to implement these in the future.
You would mention a golf.
Oh, you gotta play golf. Golf is the best. Golf is the best.
You kind of have a unique perspective too, because as you said, your wife played softball, so you got both the revenue side of it and the non-revenue side. You've emphasized a couple times every student athlete kind of. I guess the perception may be that NIL would be heavily focused on men's basketball and football. Is that not necessarily the plan for Pack of Wolves?
They're going to get be a big part of it. They drive a lot of revenue for the university and things like that. But I tell everybody, and it probably is, my wife is probably the big one in it. It's like, how am I going to be just forgotten about? Like, is that what your plan is? And no, because I tell everybody, every study hall I was in, my wife was in. Every class I attended, my wife did the same thing. Every hour that I spent in the practice facility, she did. She put in the exact same time and effort and sacrifice that I had. I put a lot of things on the side for basketball. She did the same thing. The same thing with women's track and field. The same thing with men's swimming. The same thing with all of it. Everybody is making a sacrifice and dedicating the same time. Yes, basketball and football always get viewed as different. It's not. They're all the same, and they're all dedicating the same time. And that's why I think this collective will be unique, is because we're trying to have a bigger reach than a lot of these other collectives where they're just like, let's get the star basketball and football player and just deal with them. It shouldn't be like that. You should be able to help every single program and every single student athlete in some way. And it may not even be in monetary value. It could be this, just meeting them, getting them with a businessman, a fan, someone within the community, something like that to get them involved so they can start to build those connections. And ultimately, when we have NC State student athletes graduate, they become better people because of it.
So how can something like the Pack of Wolves kind of help student athletes be financially sound while also building out their personal brand?
Yeah, so I use the Thomas Brothers kind of example. So we've had some conversations with them, and they're really, really good with their brand. You see them posting, and Thayer's got the TT headband on all the time. So they're really good. And so kind of some of the questions are they want to be financial savvy. They want to learn some things on how to, be smart about it, how to, create website, possibly do an LLC. We can connect them with all these people, and all NC State fans want to do is help. So that's the nice part about it, is obviously you're going to have to gain a little bit of trust from these student athletes to ask these questions. But there's so many people that just want to help them build their brand. I know multiple people that can create a logo for these kids. They can create some merchandising, create website. There's plenty of people to help. We just got to find what the likes and interests are of these student athletes and kind of go from there.
Do you ever imagine you would be doing something? I remember when you retired from basketball, we had you on a podcast over at Amedios. You really didn't know what you wanted to do at that point. You weren't sure you wanted to be a coach. You said everybody wants me to be a coach, and I don't think I'd want to be a coach. But just can you imagine you would be doing something like this 10 years ago?
Probably, probably not. I'm passionate about NC State. Everybody's heard the story. I named my daughter Raleigh because that's how much I love the university and everything they've given me. Uh, but I'm just passionate about NC State. I mean, I guess the roundabout answer is I always wish I would be doing something for NC State any way I could help NC State, because every penny or dime I've ever made is because of NC State and everything they've given me. And this is just my opportunity to give back everything I've learned over the years, whether it be a professional basketball player or, in the business world or whatever it may be, back to these kids. I can't use any of this brain anymore unless it's in the business world. I might as well share all the information I learned while I was a student athlete. And some of them will listen, some of them won't. But if one out of five listens and it helps them become a better player, better person, more financial savvy, that's success.
Um, well, first let's talk about the logo. By the way, the logo of the Pack of Wolves. Who designed it, and how many different renditions?
So there was a couple. We had one shot down by the university, which was okay, and then they passed off on the next one. And then I think the Sales Factory, Jarrett Disbro, who's done a lot for this collective, kind of created the initial one, and then I think the Sales Factory in Greensboro took it kind of from there. So it's had a few designs, but we kind of came up with this one, which we think works. We've added some legs because there was some concerns about the legs for a while, so we've made some changes. But it's been fun. It's just been a fun process. That's one of the first things we're trying to think. We wanted to go with just like this logo, but that was frowned upon. But the university gave us the blessing on this one, so we decided to roll with it.
Where do you kind of, in terms of the long term, it may be impossible to answer, but in terms of long term goal of where you would hope Pack of Wolves goes to, what percentage point would you say you are at right now? 5%, 10%, or are you further down the road of where you think this should be?
I think we're 97% from launch. So actually being able to get fans involved and engaged, I think we're almost there. But from kind of what everybody's kind of visioned, I think that's going to be a more long-term. That might be more of a 2-year, 3-year down the road type of thing, just so we can start to really reach all the student athletes. So I think we could do it. Maybe not from a financial standpoint early on, but then from a little bit on down the line, I think hopefully we can figure this thing out. Kind of figure out where we can get revenue streams that doesn't, necessarily take away from the Wolfpack Club and the university, so that we can really do this thing right and help everybody.
Well, on that note, I promised Scott a half an hour, so I'm keeping him in a half an hour. So
that's all right. I could talk all day, man. Don't you worry.
I've had you on a podcast before. I know how long.
Well, if you have any more questions, you might as well shoot them. We'll be all right.
What kind of response have you gotten from just a fundraising standpoint? I mean, I'm not asking for like specific dollars, obviously, but
it's been good. Obviously, the hard part is because we want to work together with the Wolfpack Club on a lot of stuff, because the Wolfpack Club has to find success for all this to work, as well as the university. But everybody's been a big help. We've had a lot of people come up. It's almost like you reach out to one person about some information, and they give you 3 more people to reach out to. So you're constantly, reaching out to new people, building new connections, finding out why they've become NC State fans, why they're passionate about NC State. And the one thing you really start to learn is everybody loves NC State. Everybody kind of has a different reason for it, and they're all genuine, good people that just want to help these student athletes. And that's been a lot of fun, getting to know a lot of these people. And a lot of them paid for my scholarship when I was here. So in a roundabout way, it's almost it's a thank you for all you've done for me and my family, my wife included. So now we get the chance to kind of give back and get them involved with some of the student athletes a little bit early on.
How about the former athletes? How many of those had you heard? I mean, I know you probably had a few that you already reached out to, you knew, but have there been some that have come ever since they heard about this have come to you and said, "Hey, I'd like to be
Yeah.
involved"?
So when we kind of have done that teaser, somebody started leaking information out that I was uh, involved. So I had a few people kind of reach out to me from there. Uh, but it's been good because the way this is kind of structured is there's going to be an executive board. The executive board is going to be a lot of businessmen, a lot of big donors that can really run a business, and then we're going to have an advisory board, which is a lot of alumni, a lot of former student athletes that have a unique perspective. And the idea with the advisory board, especially for me, is have one former student athlete from each sport, so everybody has that unique perspective. Because as much as I like to think I know what women's softball goes through, my wife knows a whole lot more. So she would be a better one to speak up on behalf of NC State softball. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do, is so we can have that good balance, because some of the things that the businessmen have seen on their end may not necessarily translate to a student athlete. So it's that good balance of businessmen, former student athletes, and how we can help the current student athletes.
Do you guys have like a ballpark figure of how much you would need to raise? I mean, again, not necessarily specific, but do you have an idea of what it would take to successfully pull this off financially, capital-wise?
Yeah, so I think our initial plan was to try to get, and I don't even know if they want me saying numbers, but we do, so I won't. So we have a number that we initially got to. We're a third of the way there. So we're making a lot of good progress. And then when the website launches, packofwolvesnil.org, there's going to be monthly subscriptions. So a lot of fans are going to get exclusive content. Some people will get T-shirt depending on what tier you get into. Some will get signed autograph stuff. Some will get. We've had conversations about doing NFTs. There's a lot of things and a lot of unique content. We plan on doing a end of the year gala, certain events, meet and greets, these type of things that these fans can have content that, and interviews and sit downs with these student athletes that they haven't been able to have in the past.
All right, I have to go shortly myself, but I'm going to end you on one question that addressed a big controversy with basketball. Was it fair that the women's basketball team had to play Connecticut in Storrs, Connecticut, the Elite Eight?
No, and the guy's leaving that should suffer the consequences. So at least they're getting him out of here, so we don't have to deal with him in the NCAA anymore. But yeah, we've been getting the shaft for a while from them, but it's nothing new. It's nothing new, and I know it stinks and it stings a little bit, but that program is very classy and would never say anything bad. So I'm glad I'm not a part of it, so I can say the NCAA. So I'll speak up for them.
How many times did you bite your lip over the years at NC State when you were playing? Like, let's say after a game at the Dean Dome or Cameron.
You've seen me interview. I'm very blunt, so I want to be clear on that. You've seen me just say some things I probably should have held back a little bit. So I'm a little bit of a cannon on that, but there's a few times, man. There's just so many things that you can't control. Student athletes need a voice. This is kind of a unique way that they can now get a voice. I think NC State now, they didn't have it when I was there. Now I think they even have a committee of to voice their opinions, the things that they're seeing within the university that they can make changes. That's the kind of things they need, because these student athletes, they sacrifice a lot of things, and we need to see what we can do to help, and then that's what we're here for.
Well, Scott, I appreciate it. Always enjoyed talking to you, and best of luck with this thing. Sounds very exciting. A lot of progress being made. So, website launch. Is there a website launch date?
The 9th. The 9th.
Okay.
Yep.
Which is, I think, when this podcast goes up, actually. So.
Yeah. So it's coming out today.
What's the website URL again?
packofwolvesnil.org.
Okay. Awesome, Scott. Appreciate your time, and we'll see you next time on the Wolfpack podcast.
All right, Matt. I look forward to it. Thank you, guys.
Yep.